Hello. So I'm a huge fan of Joe Abercrombie's books. He is one of my all-time favorite authors, if not my favorite. At the very least, he's top 3, and I've read many of his books. But what I haven't read, and what I hear no one talking about, is his YA Viking trilogy. At least I think it's Vikings. I might be wrong about that. So I already own the first book, and I have ordered the other 2. They should be coming in the mail tomorrow, because I am out of other Joe Abercrombie books, quite frankly, and would really like to read anything that I can by him. And Vikings sound cool, if that's what this is about. So this is a reading vlog where I'm going to be reading the Joe Abercrombie series that it seems like, at least in my circles, I don't see anybody talking about this. I want to see why. I want to see if it's worth reading. I really hope it is. I'm just looking forward to reading more Joe Abercrombie, honestly. This will be spoiler free, so you can watch it whether you've read it or not. We're going to hang out. We're going to read it. Hopefully we'll like it. Starting with book 1, Half a King. So I finished part 1. I'm about to start part 2, which is only 65 pages into the book, but I wanted to check in with you before I lose what's left of the sunlight of the day. And since I finished part 1, I wanted to give you initial thoughts on Half a King. So we follow a young boy named Yarville. He is a descendant of, he's a prince. He's a descendant of the king and queen, but he is not in line for the throne because he's born with a disability. And this bloodline, this throne, this kingdom views that as something insurmountable and something that completely takes him out of the running for the throne. However, when his father and brothers are killed, he's king. So this is something that he did not want. It's something that nobody around him wanted for him either, and yet overnight, this is his life. He now is betrothed to a young lady who is supposed to be betrothed to his brother, and he now has to sit on the throne and be the king and issue orders, and none of this was the life he wanted for himself, or the life that he was trained for, or the life that his mother wants for him either. So it's not really a twist, I don't think, the thing that ends that part 1 ends on, because it's literally it's in the first sentence. Yeah, it's in the first sentence of the back description. Prince Yarvi has vowed to regain a throne he never wanted. So it's right here. It's the first sentence of the description. So I think it's fine to say it doesn't all go as planned. The throne is taken from him, but now he's determined to get it back, whatever it costs. What I will say about this, even though I can't say I'm hooked in part 1, I can say that Abercrombie always delivers in his characterization, be it for Yarvi, our main character, and it's just Abercrombie is so good at depicting characters' emotions and feelings and character relationships, the dynamics between characters. Like, take this for example. Yarvi went at the fore, of course, his mother overshadowing him in every sense at his shoulder, and Mother Gundering, struggling to keep up behind, bent over her staff. Immediately, do you kind of understand everybody's position in that? His mother overshadowing him in every sense, and then this woman trying to keep up, bent over her staff. Now listen to this description of his mother. Leifland might have been queen no longer, but no other word would fit her, and Hurrick, still hovering huge and silent at her shoulder, sworn forever to her service. Once she spoke, it was a thing already done. Or this of Uric. He cleared his throat. He shifted his sword belt. It still hung strangely on him. He felt as if it always would. One more. I know I'm being obnoxious. He had always felt weak, but he had never felt truly powerless until they made him king. Just in so few words, Abercrombie can clearly articulate the internal state of our protagonist and the role and status and domineering presence of characters standing alongside him. So, part 1, not super exciting. Kind of your standard setup for what you might expect for a story like this. And yet it's Abercrombie writing it, and so I'm just so enamored by the prose and the quick and deep character work. Initial impressions are, yeah, story's not amazing, but I know this author and I trust him. Part 1, going pretty well. Books 2 and 3 came in the mail. They're beautiful, and it doesn't bother me at all that they don't match the edition that I got of book 1. I feel great about this. This is completely fine. After he is separated from his family and from everything that he was expected to have done when the betrayal happens, he ends up is it on the back? No, it's not on the back what happens to him. He ends up going through a lot, meeting a lot of new people, some great, some not so great, and he has to really fight to be able to fulfill the promise that he made, which is to avenge his father and brother's death, and as well as to get back to his throne. We're introduced to different parts of the world that contain their own cultures, religions, household stories and songs, and rule of law. And I realized pretty quickly that I was comparing a lot of the world building that was happening and a lot of the character work that was happening. I was comparing it to First Law and Age of Madness and the standalones. I was comparing it to other Abercrombie books. So I tried very deliberately to separate myself from his other books, because those are adult fantasy, this is YA fantasy, this is trying to do something different, it's trying to be more streamlined, it's trying to be faster paced, it's trying to be something that's different from what I've already read and fallen in love with. And if I compare them too closely, then this is destined to fail. Like, there's no chance for me to actually enjoy these books because they're trying to do something different. So I've separated this book from those others, and I'm trying to view this book as its own thing that Abercrombie is doing something different with, and not expect the same things out of it from those other books. And as soon as I started doing that, I was able to enjoy this a lot more as well, because it really is doing something really special. I mean, Abercrombie is a phenomenal character writer, and Yarvi is a great character to follow in that as he is encountering these different scenarios and these obstacles, he is willing to do what it takes to get to where he needs to be. That includes lying. That includes screwing other people over. It doesn't matter what it takes. He has a goal in mind. So he's a great gray, morally gray character to follow. Someone who is easy to like because he absolutely is an underdog in this world, but he still isn't the hero of the story. And then you have these side characters that are so much fun and that I really hope carry over into the next book. Specifically, there's a madman with a sword that just was wonderful, a wonderful part of this book. And the twists. Joe got me on a couple of these. He got me on a couple of these. There were some really good twists in this book, some really exciting action sequences, far more tightly paced. And there were times where I really wanted the book to have time to breathe a little bit more than it did, but I think that that's because this is a YA book, and so Joe was intentionally making it a faster paced story. He wasn't taking his time like he does in his other books. Like I said, there are some things, some world building elements, some character moments that I really wanted to have the time to breathe a little bit more, but I don't have strong complaints about this book. I think that it was a lot of fun. I think that there were some really amazing characters, amazing twist, a really interesting world that I'd like to explore more, because I think we just kind of got the surface of it in this particular book. I think it was a really good intro book to the series. There's a lot of things that piqued my interest that I'm excited to go deeper on. There are a lot of things that I'm excited to see more from. Fast-paced, fun, great character work, great twists. I had a good time. So my plan was to take this series kind of slowly and pick up the next book, whenever, and continue the vlog, but actually I think I just want to see what happens next. So I think I'm just going to go straight into book 2. I am 150 pages into Half the World, and they have flown by. So some things that I didn't expect to happen in the sequel. The main character for book 1 is now a side character. He's moved aside, and a new lead has stepped forward, and her name is Thorn. So Thorn loves to fight, and she's very good at it, and she's been training for this for a long time, and she gets into a sparring match, which is kind of rigged against her. It's not good news. And in order to protect herself, in order to defend herself, she ends up killing one of the people that she's sparring with and declared a murderer. And her whole life is turned upside down. And then the secondary lead character that we follow is Brand, who is a warrior who hates to kill. So they're opposites. And he too, they've both had their positions stripped of them and their lives changed drastically. But he hadn't spoken up. Facing an enemy on the battlefield took courage, but you had your friends beside you. Standing alone against your friends, that was a different kind of courage. One Brand didn't pretend to have. I love the way Abercrombie writes his female leads. I loved Monza from Best Served Cold, and there's quite a few characteristics in Thorn that remind me of Monza. She's her own character, but she has that same kind of grit, and she's also looking for revenge. But I just think Joe writes his female leads so well, and I love her. Now Brand is the one that's easier to love. He's the good one. He's the one that you know for a very short time and you instantly are endeared to him. And Thorn, I think, is meant to be a little bit thorny at first when you meet her, but I just love her instantly. And on this convoy with Yarvi, he's a side character, but he's still very present, at least so far in the book. As they're going through all that they're going through, there's still such great character relationships with these as well as other side characters. Again, I love the way Abercrombie writes his characters that we follow as well as the side characters. And it looks like I do get to explore this world more, which is exactly what I wanted out of book one. So already I'm just loving this so much. I'm really enjoying this one. Initial impressions, very positive. We have a lot to talk about in this clip, so bear with me. It might be a little bit long, but I finished half the world and I loved this. Okay, so we follow Thorn, who wants to be a warrior, who's training, and she's very good at it, and essentially is sabotaged to lose her position that she is rightfully gaining. Why? Because have you ever heard of a woman warrior? This doesn't make sense. She should figure something else out. Then we also have Brand, who is on track to be a warrior, who is going to get this position. It's not necessarily what he wants, it's more what he needs because he's trying to provide for himself and his sister and get them out of the position that they're in. But he's also just he's very led by his morals, and he can't help himself but do what feels right, which gets him in hot water a lot. So because of these two circumstances that they're in, I won't give you details about how everything plays out for them, but because of these two circumstances that they're in, they then team up with Yarvi, who is now older and in a different position than he was in book one, and they are traveling across half the world in order to try to create an alliance with other territories, with other countries, with other kingdoms, to ally against the High King. This is a big task. As you might guess, sorry if that was a little bit repetitive, I feel like I did a bad job at a quick summary in the last clip, so I just wanted to repeat it before we get into. As you might guess, this is not an easy task. Some people are willing to listen to them, some aren't. In trying to create these allies, it sometimes doesn't go well, so there's still plenty of action, there's still plenty of twists, there's still a lot of exciting moments. These books are very fast-paced, but it's a ton of fun. And Yarvi moving to the side has actually just, I mean, he's in a different position. A lot has changed with him since book one, but he has become so much more of an interesting character in book two. But Joe Abercrombie is just so good at creating such human characters that feel so real. All their motivations make sense. All the decisions they make sense. All the things that they experience on these journeys are just so human. They just feel so authentic. So a theme that I've noticed in this series so far is people finding their place in the world, which I think suits the YA genre really well. It's usually a coming of age genre, but these people are really fighting to be able to occupy the space in this world that they need to when they are the underdogs, when they're not what fits inside the world. So we have Yarvi, which we talked about in the previous book, who's not deemed fit enough, strong enough. He's not able-bodied enough to be able to occupy the space that he should be able to, and his quest is a revenge quest. Like, he is trying to get back at the people who killed his family, as well as get his throne back, but it's also his strengths and intellect and in cunning and in ingenuity, that those things are enough to push him in this world and to get him where he needs to be, and he eventually is able to be able to get to the place that he needs to be in the story. I know I'm keeping it vague, but I want you to enjoy all the twists and turns that it takes. Thorn is a person who, once again, just like Yarvi, is not allowed to occupy the space in this world that feels right to her. Like, this is her space, and so she has to push past a lot of barriers, and she has to fight to be able to be respected and to be honored and to go against what is deemed acceptable for her. Now, Brand is a little bit of a different story because he needs a little bit less growth than the other two in this book, but still, it's a matter of finding his people and fighting for what he believes in and learning what bravery and fighting for what's right really looks like for him. Then there's also a romance in this, and it's written so well because, again, Joe writes human characters so well. So we're so close to their inner thoughts, to what's going on inside of them, to the turmoil that they're facing. And so I was so invested in it. I just love the way Abercrombie writes relationships, be it platonic or romantic. I love the way he writes the human condition, just humans working through life. Even when he writes miscommunication into his books, it doesn't feel contrived or forced. It feels so authentic to the characters, and it doesn't feel overly dragged out. It makes sense the way it's done, and I was invested in it. I really enjoyed this book. So we come to the end of the book where we've tried to create all these allies, we've had successes, we've had failures, we've been through a lot, and now we have a very shaky allyship that's been formed, and here comes war. And I've already finished part 1 of Half a War. I didn't realize how much I missed Abercrombie's writing until I started this trilogy, and I was like, I'm not gonna be able to stop, especially because these books are so fast-paced. It's really hard not to just read them all the time. So I finished part 1, which puts me at 125 pages into book 3. This time we're following Princess Skara. Yes, it's another companion-like book. I've realized now that this trilogy, we focus in on different characters for each book, which I'm used to. I'm in it now. I'm into it. It's fine. So this time we follow Princess Skara. She was mentioned in book 2 as we were traveling around to the different kingdoms. So now we're shifting focus to her, and now that this looming war is on the horizon, this kingdom is going to be affected by it, but she feels very unprepared for the brutality of the world, for the war that's coming, and for what she's supposed to do and how she's supposed to handle all this. Then we have her total opposite. Wraith is a sword bearer, and he loves war and violence. So those are the two perspectives that were they seem to be the main ones that we're focused in on in this one, but we still have perspectives from previous books. We still get to see Thorn in her new role, what she's doing, as well as Brand, and gosh, Brand is just a delight. Every time he comes on page, he's just a delight. As well as Yarvi is still here, continues to be a very intriguing side character. He gets better as the series goes on. I think I already said that, but it's important to me that you know it. Anyway, I think I'm just gonna try to go ahead and finish this today. I've already disrupted my TBR so violently this month because I wasn't planning on reading any of these this month. This was very much an impulse, but they're so quick, and I'm just in it. So I think I'd like to just give my day to this book and see how this trilogy ends. So I'll let you know. Half a War is done. I'm going to give you very vague thoughts since this is the conclusion to a trilogy. Just did I like it? And then we'll flow into final spoiler-free thoughts for the trilogy as a whole. So I really enjoyed seeing characters come into their own, new characters come into their own, just like they have in the previous books. I enjoyed seeing the whole cast together, playing different roles and really being who they're meant to be, fulfilling the roles that just suit them. It was really satisfying to see it all come together and to see how these characters and their decisions shaped the world. Naturally, it's Abercrombie, so it also comes with its fair amount of tragedy and, you know, grit, but it is YA, so not on the same level of those things as you have maybe seen from other Abercrombie series. But in this last one, it is a war, so there's tons of action, tons of intense moments, but there's also tons of mind games, tons of intelligence moves, because, as the book says, only half of a war is fought with swords. The other half is fought with the mind. It seems my track record with Abercrombie's series enders is that I am generally very pleased with them, but I have my nitpicks. I have things that I would have liked to have been explored a little bit more or taken a little bit farther, or maybe certain things that I would have liked done a little bit more with. If you want an example of that, you can check out my Wisdom of Crowds review, which is a spoiler review. So, you know, if you've read the trilogy, you can check that out, and that kind of gives you an example of how I tend to feel about Abercrombie endings, where there are a few things that I would like to tweak and move around a little bit, but overall, very satisfied. That's how I feel about this. There's a few things that I wouldn't mind changing a little bit, but overall, I had a really good time with this trilogy. I think book 1 was a solid start, but not anything that blew me away. Book 2 I loved, and book 3 I found to be a very satisfying conclusion. Now, whole series or whole trilogy chat, and then also talking about it alongside other works of Joe Abercrombie, this does not touch the Blade Itself or Age of Madness trilogies. Age of Madness is a 6-star trilogy to me. It breaks the scale. It's a near perfect trilogy. Most of what Joe writes is near perfect to me. So I guess you should know that you are speaking to a bit of a fangirl, but I really enjoyed this different type of series. So if you are an established Abercrombie fan, I think that if you go into it not expecting it to be the next The Blade Itself or the next Age of Madness trilogy, just go in knowing that this is something different. This is the Shattered Seas, and allow it to be the Shattered Seas. I don't think that this series compares to the other two, but I think that it was a fun time, and it was written by one of my favorite authors. I still got his amazing prose and his amazing character work. The world isn't as deep, and some of the concepts introduced, some of the struggles introduced don't go quite as deep. Boundaries aren't pushed quite as far, but it was still, I mean, I still had a lot of fun with it. I don't really know what the general consensus is for this trilogy. I don't know how Abercrombie fans typically feel about it. I just know that I don't hear it talked about very much at all by Abercrombie fans, and I just wanted to read it and find out why, and then I ended up just wanting to read it because I just wanted to read it. It was a fun time. Age of Madness I don't think can be topped. Anything Joe puts out, I would be shocked if anything could top that for me. The Blade Itself is right there behind it. I love the Blade Itself trilogy as well, and this comfortably fits into I had a blast. It's its own thing, but it was still fun, and it was still Abercrombie. So if you're an established Abercrombie fan, I would say still check it out. I don't know if you'll like it or not, because I don't know your taste, but I thought that it was good fun. If you are not an established Abercrombie fan, I personally wouldn't recommend this as your starting point, just because it's not, it doesn't showcase all that Abercrombie can do. And if you're just starting out with his work, this might not give you a full impression of what his books are capable of. However, if you have tried The Blade itself and you found it to be too slow for you to really be able to get into and you quit on it, this could be a good alternative just for something that's a lot more tightly paced, a lot more action-packed, very bingeable. And then from there, maybe that could give you a little bit more idea, more insight on if it's worth pushing a little bit farther on The Blade itself and giving the series a full, a full go. Either way, I had a good time, so hopefully you had a good time watching me read it. If you have read it, let me know what you think of it. If you plan to read it, let me know that too. I post videos every Monday and Friday on this channel, Tuesdays and Thursdays on my review channel, where I post weekly reading vlogs. You can keep up with what I'm reading, or spoiler reviews like the Wisdom of Crowds one that I mentioned. I have one for all of the books in the Age of Madness trilogy. I'm a little bit hysterical in them. I'll see you again soon. Bye.